Stumbling upon a marriage proposal while walking along the beach here in LA. She said yes. Not to Dwayne, he's spoken for, but Dwayne and Cabby, they're invited to the wedding, right? They gotta pull up. You gotta go, right?
They got to. They got to go. You gotta love D-Wade. Gotta love him.
This was so
Just
nice.
a good guy.
I love that. Just spreading the love, spreading the happiness. Nice, by the way, to see marriage proposal in 2020. We need more good things in 2020 because the deficit is really, it's a lot. Welcome to The Jump. I'm Rachel Nichols alongside ESPN senior NBA writer Zach Lowe. He's the guy over there on the end of your screen. And Kendrick Perkins is the NBA champ in the middle of your screen, just in case you're confused about who is who. Coming up, former Warrior Mo Spates threw some shade on LeBron's name. He reposted a meme comparing Bron's finals record to MJ's. Perk, it's going to shock you. He is not thrilled about this, so stick around to find out a little bit more about what we're talking about. First, though, thanks to yesterday's Woj bomb, we now know who will lead the Clippers on the sidelines next season. Ty Lue has agreed to a 5-year deal with the franchise. Lue, of course, spent last season as the lead assistant under Doc Rivers, who is now in Philly. And so Ty, intimately familiar with some of the chemistry issues we saw surface throughout the season and postseason. And we got some additional details of those problems in a report in The Athletic. Teammates being rubbed the wrong way, believing Kawhi was getting preferential treatment, like being able to live in San Diego, or the games he took off for load management. So, Kendrick, Kawhi, unquestionably the best player on that team. Do you think he was able to be the on-court leader of the Clippers last season with just sort of the chemistry and the issues in the locker room? And do you think that he can be that leader moving forward, and he should be?
Well, first of all, Rachel, who is complaining about Kawhi Leonard getting special treatment? Look, I played 14 seasons in the NBA, and I played with a lot of Hall of Famers, and all of them got special treatment. It's part of being a franchise player. It's part of getting paid the big bucks. You got to deal with it. Long as they deliver on the court, that's one thing. Second of all, they don't have a leader. The Clippers do not have a leader. Kawhi Leonard is not a guy that speaks out vocally and talks about it. He just goes out there and performs and does his job. And if I'm the Clippers, I would really consider trying to get at Rajon Rondo. They do need a leader. They need a voice in that locker room that's going to hold guys accountable. It's only so much you could do as a coaching staff and as a head coach. You need a guy that's going to hold guys accountable, that's going to say the right things in the locker room, and that's going to lose themselves in the team and lead by example and preach the gospel day in and day out and make sure guys don't have a hidden agenda. So right now, the Clippers do not have a leader, and that's part of their problem.
I agree with Perk. I mean, I do think it's tempting to sort of assume that guys will always be who they are, and Kawhi's quiet and Paul George isn't a leader. Who knows? Maybe this season, maybe the humbling, maybe the embarrassment of what happened to them against Denver, maybe those guys make changes. They're only 29, 30 years old. We shouldn't just assume static personalities. But right now, Perk is right. I think as great a leader as Kawhi is by example, and several players there have told me, wow, we couldn't believe the work this guy puts in day to day. Just watching him was important for us. Ty Lue is the closest thing to have to a personality now who's going to galvanize the locker room, because you know you're going to get to the playoffs, you're going to get punched in the face, and you're going to need someone to have uncomfortable conversations to get people right. They when they got punched in the face by Denver, they just fell flat on the canvas and never got up. So right now it's Ty Lue, but I'm interested to see how those two guys maybe can grow into it. It's the second year. They really barely played together in the first year, so I'm not sort of just going to pigeonhole them as what they are now forever.
What do you think of Perk's assessment that they should go after Rajon Rondo?
I think he would help their team. The playoff Rondo is clearly a thing. He's probably more likely to go back to the Lakers, and they don't have any cap space really to get him, so we'll see what happens. But certainly a veteran guy who has the respect of Kawhi and Paul George, who is vocal, who will talk in film sessions, who will point out rotations and this and that. Anybody like that would be useful for sure.
We talk about like who's the heart and soul of a team, right? It's not always the best player. Perk, is it a little more complicated on a team where a guy like Patrick Beverley is so outspoken and in a lot of ways the season before last represented who the Clippers were, right? That feistiness, the performance that he put on against the Golden State Warriors in the first round of the playoffs that year. What are the sort of complexities in a locker room? And by the way, the Clippers are not the only team we've seen this with, where your most vocal player, the most sort of feisty and sort of energy player is not your best player.
Right, and look, and I love Patrick Beverly, and I strongly believe the tenacity that he brings to that team, he gives them swagger, but that don't make him a leader because he never been to the promised land. He never won a championship, so he don't know what it takes to get there. And being a leader, you have to be able to adjust. You have to handle everyone differently. And I say this all the time, just because you're the star player doesn't make you the leader of that locker room. I've been on plenty of locker rooms, especially in 2008, where James Posey was our leader. He was the guy that was doing majority of the talking. And so you live and you learn. And I think Patrick Beverly, especially in this past season when he was in the bubble, he learned from his mistakes of walking that fine line of talking noise and actually being a real leader. And I think he will adjust. I love him, but they need a leader, Rachel. They need a leader in that locker room.
Yeah, I agree with you. I love the way Pat Beverly goes about his business. I think maybe not so much on the engaging Damian Lillard again. I wouldn't necessarily advise that. But I do want him to still be Pat Bev because we are a better league and a more fun league with him being who he is. Zach, there's always questions when an assistant coach takes over for the guy who just got let go. We did see Ty Lue make some significant changes to the Cavaliers when he took over for David Blatt, even though he was on Blatt's staff. But it feels a little different this time. I mean, Doc Rivers really has mentored Ty Lue through his entire coaching career. So what differences do you think we can expect to really see with Ty Lue at the helm versus Doc?
Yeah, there's still room for a lot of changes. I mean, the Clippers are still a brand new team. They were still learning each other when the season stopped last year. And I think Ty Lue, he has a reputation as sort of a guy who gets in people's faces and he held LeBron accountable. I think that stuff has overshadowed how smart a tactical coach he is. And I think you're going to see him experiment more with lineups that maybe Doc didn't use as much, for good or for bad. Maybe some of them won't work, maybe some of them will. I think they'll shoot more threes. I think they'll play smaller more, sometimes without a traditional center. I think he'll experiment with some more kind of adventurous defensive schemes and use next season to see what sticks, to prepare them to pivot from one scheme to another in a playoff series that demands it. I think Ty's a really underrated tactical coach.
Not on this show, I would say, Zach. We are always talking about his X and O's. Perk, you and I talk about this all the time, right? I mean, it's why, frankly, I thought that Houston would be lucky to get him because they needed some more imaginative thinking on the court. What do you expect from the X and O angle from Ty in L.A.?
Well, see, a lot of people don't realize and they discredit him because he coached LeBron James. But behind the scenes, Rachel, this guy is a stud. Ty Lue don't sleep. He's a film watcher. He's a student of the game. He holds guys accountable, like Zach said, especially in the film room and in practices. You don't see too many emotions out of Ty Lue during the game because he always lived by the motto of practices are for coaches, games are for players. But he's going to hold guys accountable, and he also is able to relate to guys. Like, this is a team that needed a different voice. No knock on Doc Rivers, but they needed this young blood in Ty Lue that's going to be able to relate to them on and off the court. And this is why I say this is a players' league, because if anyone has any doubt that Kawhi Leonard and Paul George didn't have a say in this Ty Lue hiring, they're in denial because franchise players, have a say in who they want.
Of course.
And I think Ty Lue voicing his opinion while he was an associate head coach played a huge part in this hiring and Doc firing.
And Ty's range of experience, who he's played with, who he's coached, whether it ranges from Shaq and Kobe, Tracy McGrady, Kevin Garnett, yourself, obviously, Perk. I mean, there's so many, LeBron, we talk about all the time, but there's so many different playing styles that he has been able to sort of be part of. He's definitely a scribble on the back of a napkin, plays on the back of a napkin guy. I've seen him do that. He loves tinkering so much. I've had guys say to me, I think he's making changes just to make changes because he is so interested in the game and the mechanics of how it works. So I am always excited when he gets sort of at the helm of something to see what he does with it. He's going to take the Clippers out for a spin, and we're going to see just how much they got under the hood. All right, coming up, Spencer Dinwiddie from the Nets. He's going to be joining us to discuss his recovery from coronavirus and new head coach Steve Nash. Also, his expectations for next season with a healthy Kevin Durant. I don't know if you heard KD's coming back. All right, yeah. First, though, it's time for our distant replay featuring a ridiculous play by Tyson Chandler in a 2004 preseason game.
One left-handed, now another one right-handed by Chandler.
Wow. 2:02 left here in the third.